Wait a minute, we never got to talk about you. You and Zayn just being like, "Oh no way, Muhammad Ankalaev makes this fight boring."
Yeah.
He's not a decision machine like that.
Oh no. Hey, for a little while it seemed like I was right, that he wasn't going to allow it to just be utterly tepid. It was slowly getting better and more interesting as it went on. It's just that then it stopped happening. All right, so I was almost not wrong.
Sons of bitches. Like Islam Makhachev on his 4-fight finish streak. Oh no.
Ugh, who cares? Boring. Muhammad Ankalaev, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know why? Because he doesn't know he's a grappler. That's it.
As I said on Twitter, like he's following the Jones playbook, but he might be skipping to the end a bit too quickly there.
Yeah, just forget that you're a wrestler for no apparent reason. But that's great. That's exactly what I want to see. If Islam Makhachev forgot that he could grapple, I would become a fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did find myself thinking, like, Santos is troubling to fight against for everyone in the division because he's another guy who just doesn't bite on feints very much.
Yeah.
And just only counterpunches when you throw, which means that people who are going to beat him are either just pure insensate aggression that doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's trying to output, or people with built-in defense when they throw.
Yeah.
Which is no one. Like, no one can really safely beat him. On the other hand, there's a really solid chance that Iwan Kutalaba would do him way worse than Ankalaev
That's
did.
A very good point.
Which would then, obviously, set up Kutalaba Ankalaev 3. The fight that everyone is looking
Yes! Oh
could
my
be
God.
like, look at what I did to this guy. You barely beat him. You got knocked down and almost finished.
Yes!
Go.
Oh my God. You're a genius, Phil.
No.
Kutalaba Santos now. I demand.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The only way we can get Kutalaba was Ankalaev 3.
Which that's what the people want. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, as always, Connor Ridge. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie. Phil, I'm talking at an accelerated pace because I have a plan for this week's episode. We have the first of two consecutive heavyweight fight night main events on the UFC schedule.
Yay.
I know, it's great. I will say, the upcoming main events, and maybe there's a hint here for UFC matchmaking, the upcoming main events after these two all look fire. Right? Like, you can complain about Volkanovski, Korean Zombie, whatever, but it's going to be a fun fight. Luque Muhammad, too. Awesome. Lemos Andrade should be fun and ridiculous. Oliveira Gaethje, the one that you tipped me off about, like minutes ago, Font Vera. These are good main events. And do you know why, Phil?
Because they're not tested above welterweight.
They're not big guys. Enough big guys in main events. And on that note, we are going to talk about this upcoming UFC Fight Night main event, Volkov versus Aspinall. Which will probably be, violent and fast if all goes according to plan, and that's fine. That's what heavyweight should be. But we're going to talk about it violently and quickly in order to move on then to the co-main event, Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker, a featherweight fight, which should probably be the main event because it's just more interesting. And then after that, we're going to look back at, more of the undercard here. It's a pretty solid looking card, actually. We've got, I'm not 100% sure what all we're going to discuss, but we've got Jai Herbert, Ilia Topuria opening the main card. We've got, Nikita Krylov versus Paul Craig, which is what a light heavyweight fight should be. We've got Jack Shore versus Timur Valiev, curiously buried in the middle of the prelims, even though to me that is kind of the best fight on the whole card. So we're going to touch on, whatever seems sensible and convenient out of those on this week's episode before, maybe very, very briefly discussing last week's card. Not that it was bad, but, I'll whine about it later. And, then we're also going to talk about a fight of the year contender from the sport of boxing that took place last weekend. That being Mick Conlon versus Lee Wood, which was a sensational and a sensationally violent fight against all expectations. I have not followed boxing very closely the last couple years, but everyone who still does told me, hey, don't feel bad about missing this, having watched at times tepid UFC card instead of this sensational battle, because literally no one expected it to be like this. But it was fantastic, and we're going to talk about that later in today's episode. But anyway, enough ado, Phil. And the heavyweights, Volkov-Aspinall. Quickly now. Come on, Phil.
Yeah, essentially this is Aspinall's first crack at one of the quote-unquote actually good heavyweights.
Yeah, one which he did,
of which I think...
which he expressly said he didn't want yet.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
After his last fight, he was
like,
that. Yeah, he was like, I don't want to fight. I don't remember what kind of English accent he has. I don't want to fight.
Probably like that.
A top 5 heavyweight. Please give me more bloated tomato cans. And they're like, nah, you're fighting Volkov. There's no one else in the division. You're getting pushed.
Yeah, they probably offered him like the princely sum of 80K for the main event, and he was just like, wow, that's the most money I've ever seen for fighting.
Cool, that's a lot of dosh, isn't it?
Yes. Quite. Yeah, so, I mean, that makes it pretty difficult to tell, because he has looked genuinely good, and the other thing is that his heavyweight run has actually, bizarrely enough, aged quite well.
Uh-huh.
Like, Spivak, looks good. Andrei Arlovsky, is doing okay.
Still there.
Like, even Jake Collier. I mean, Alan Bardo, yeah, whatever. But, it's an okay run.
Mm-hmm.
A Volkov-ready run.
Yeah, I don't think...
seem like it.
I don't know if it's unlikely even that he wins this fight. It's just, I think he was probably correct from a career management perspective in thinking, I'm a heavyweight. I have potentially up to 25 years more to do this. I should take time to practice. But yeah, but you don't think it seems like a Volkov-ready run. Why is that?
Yeah, as I said, there's the gulf between the actually good heavyweights and the rest is really pretty sizable,
mm-hmm.
and it's only really bridged by the complete randomness that is Derek Lewis,
mm-hmm.
Who is not good, but is obviously just, insensate power.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the main thing is that obviously Aspinall has been dusting everyone in 2 rounds or less.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to knock Alexander Volkov out.
It's true. Yeah, and that Arlovsky fight is so far the most interesting. In some ways the most impressive, I think, of this entire run by a long shot. And I won't even say in some ways. It is just the best win here. But also, in part it was impressive because it gave, some cause for concern. And I think really a fight like that was probably the thing that told Aspinall, I need more time to get better at this. Because what happened was he, was doing the thing to Arlovsky that he does to everyone, which is to run up and have pretty solid boxing and huge power and smash them immediately. And then Arlovsky survived. And then Aspinall was looking really very ragged, which is what you would expect.
Will say, I think we have possibly slightly overplayed this, because I do have it replaying in front of me. He honestly looks fine.
He looks fine.
He doesn't really look bad in the second round against Arlovski. He does get clipped a couple of times, but I think that's just doesn't look super tired.
Okay.
I think it's partially who he is. I mean, one of the sort of quite unheavyweight skills that he has is that he can counterpunch in combination.
Mm-hmm.
And once Arlovski figures out that's what he's doing, it's all hand speed counterpunching. It's when he sees something coming, he will just throw 2-3 shots very, very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
He's relatively accurate. Like, Arlovski is just able to throw away shots and then counter, between his first, Spinall's first two. So I think in retrospect, it looks more like a depth issue than like a tiredness one. And he also adapts and then immediately, he immediately takes Arlovski down off a thrown kick and submits him, which is good. I think it looks better than I thought it did.
No, well,
but that being said,
to me,
it's still very hard to just be like, there's really not much to show that this guy can go 5 rounds with a fighter like Alexander Volkov, assuming that Alexander Volkov is still in shape, which I think he probably is.
Which is very much part of my point. I don't think Aspinall looks like compared to most heavyweights who tend to rely on finishing someone immediately, he recovers brilliantly against Arlovski.
And he has and he does very much almost finish Arlovski.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's like a Terence McKinney thing where you'd be very forgiving. You could very much forgive him for just putting his wad on.
Oh, sure.
Trying to.
Yeah. And especially so for McKinney. We'll talk about that later, but, some people were like, he fought like a moron. And I'm like, well, it was Drew Dober on a week's notice. Go for it, I guess. You heard him right away. Go for it. But the point here is not just that, it's good. Partly the point is that he recovers well. He comes up with an adjustment which allows him to get out of the phase where Arlovski is suddenly not only surviving, but sort of troubling him. He stays relatively fresh. I agree. Though he does visibly get tired and a little discouraged. He stays relatively quite fresh. The problem is, are you going to have that easy out against a guy who isn't Arlovski? Who, if anything, his late career has just become survivable. And if you self-destruct against Arlovski, he's going to beat you. But if not, then, you like Aspinall showed, you're still going to have lots of opportunities. Totally agree. The gap between guys like Arlovski, who is holding the gates, and guys who are top 3, top 4 heavyweights, is mostly that they might things might continue to get worse, after you have that first hitch where you can't get them out of there early. And Volkov seems like a prime example of that. Someone who has the potential to not only survive your early onslaught, but to then build over the rest of the fight and not just become a problem to solve, but a problem that gets increasingly worse and more difficult to solve.
Yeah. I mean, there's, I think the other thing is that, Volkov also throws in combination in exchanges quite a lot. And he is, obviously not anything defensively speaking.
No.
But he does have a big reach advantage.
He does, though.
He's a big, tall guy.
Big, tall guy.
And Aspinall is not he's not a particularly dedicated jabber or level change guy, he is, when he was countering kicks and so on, he was previously a wrestler, previously a grappler before he started knocking people out. But, I think getting stuck in punching exchanges with Volkov, you either have to be just an absolutely nuclear puncher,
mm-hmm.
or which, Aspinall might be. I mean, again, it's hard to tell because no one he's fought is tremendously durable.
Yeah.
You have to be either a nuclear puncher or you just have to be disgustingly durable. But you just have to be you just have to have a certain level of skill like Cyril Gahn. And
composure and experience, and it's the staying power. I will add that Volkov looked pretty goddamn bad in his last fight. He didn't look good against Gahn, but no one did really for that Gahn's run to the title. But he looked pretty out of shape and kind of slow. I think this is an impression that was only worsened by the fact that his hairline has started to recede. So he suddenly had like a Saperbek Safarov kind of vibe, when fighting Marcin Tybura. But, I'm going to pick him because I agree with your initial assessment, which is that he's the kind of guy I need to see Aspinall beat before I will expect it to happen. And even then, if he beats him in the way that I expect he might, because it's heavyweight, he could certainly just flash KO him. It's not like that's never happened to Volkov before. Then I will still have learned nothing new about Tom Aspinall, which again is why he was probably right in his impulse to say, his impulse to stay fighting squishier, lower ranked heavyweights.
Yeah, I got to pick Volkov by default. Yeah, I mean, you're right. He looked pretty bad against Tybura. I mean, both looked in many ways worse than Aspinall did at the beginning of their second round that he did against Arlovsky.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the fact that, 5 rounds, I might pick Aspinall over Volkov for 3.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Just because I'm fairly confident he's going to win the first round. I think he's got a very good chance of winning the second, but 5 rounds is such a grinding fight to be stuck in.
Yeah.
With Alexander Volkov. There's no real outs against him. He's not going to. Is he going to take him down and control him? It didn't work that well for Curtis Blades.
No, Volkov is.
Curtis Blades got tired doing that to Volkov.
Volkov's a good defensive grappler and increasingly good at getting back to his feet.
Yeah, Tybura is a good wrestler. He really couldn't get that much done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just one of those ones you can't really pick it until you see it, I think.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, let's talk about featherweights.
Hey.
Arnold Allen, Dan Hooker. Featherweights is slightly in quotes here because this is Dan Hooker returning to 145 after a long and really quite successful stint at 155. Not really. I mean, that is, I think, first things first, a big old asterisk hanging over this fight is that we don't know. I mean, Hooker was a featherweight for a very long time, but it has been like I said, a very long time since he was down there. I have no idea how well he still makes that division. Or even if he can still make it without terribly diminishing his body, how accustomed he is at this point to the sort of feel of a featherweight fight. Because I know one thing for certain, Arnold Allen's going to feel a lot faster with his hands than most of the dudes Hooker was fighting at 155.
Yep.
He's got very quick hands. So, thoughts. Arnold Allen beat Sadiq Youssef. The last good TriStar fighter, Arnold Allen. He's here to avenge Nasrat Haqparast, who lost.
Good point.
Right? He's the last guy at a TriStar where you're like, you know what? This guy has enough innate grittiness and craftiness to make these sort of TriStar handcuffs work for him.
And he's sort of protean fighter. I've said that this is quite a British trait, is that for whatever reason they tend to just really generically well-rounded fighters these days.
I love vocab, Phil,
he's
but
really one of the classic examples of that.
What does protean mean?
He's been able to have been able to basically mold himself to the situation a fair few fights.
Oh.
Necessarily in that he's initiating grappling or striking, but just in terms of directionality and take for example the Gilbert Melendez fight.
Yes.
Is very much him picking up on what people have told them, what people have showed about attacking Gill's lead leg, and having a sort of relatively aggressive mid-range fight. Then, Sadiq Yusuff, he's able to basically have a counter-punching performance on the back foot. He's able to kind of put these... he's got and was essentially able to win a grappling match against Amikani.
Yeah, and then lost and then suddenly won a grappling match against Mads Burnell.
Yeah, I mean, him against Mads Burnell was very much a fighter of two people, I think, who both have that to their game. They're both just very, very well-rounded and skilled in a lot of areas.
It's a fantastic fight, by the way. I always love an excuse to rewatch
very good.
it. Very good.
I really like it's always great when you see like young, talented fighters going at it in their prime. I'm more and more a fan of it as I get older, because there's always the thing of shouldn't be wasted on each other and so on. They should be given their chance to go up the division, but so frequently do I look back on those things, and I'm just like, man, it was great just watching these guys, absolute limit of physicality and confidence, and you can see how good they would become later on, all that other kind of stuff. Such
a skillful fight too, and I think they both grew from it. I mean, they've both done quite well for themselves in the aftermath of that fight.
You get to watch these fights like Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman, or the one we talked about recently, Arman Tsarukyan against Islam Makhachev. And those fights, they just age super well. They're always great to look back on. But yeah, digressing. He's pretty well rounded, but he's also been, as we said, exactly the right level of competition, as evidenced by the fact that every fight he has is pretty close in one way or another.
Yeah, but I think it has
a few exceptions like the Melendez and so on.
Sort of like what I was saying with Bryce Mitchell last week or the week before, whatever it was. Allen's competitive road to ranked contendership has showcased his ability to deal with adversity and, as you said, to adapt and change to the circumstances of a fight, which I think is the real element. I'm not sure. It does not appear to be a thing that you can just rely on TriStar fighters to be imbued with by going to that gym. But those are the guys who come out of TriStar that flourish. Are the super, just mentally flexible, calm, resourceful fighters, who, because TriStar in many ways, it's sort of like it sort of has an SBG Ireland vibe. And I do not mean that as the insult it sounds. But in that, I think Firas Zahabi is also a martial artist who's very big on the idea of not being shackled to a particular style. And for most guys, I don't think that works, because most people are shackled to a particular style for one reason or another. There's a thing that works best for them that they should probably invest in and lean into as best they can. But yeah, when you do get these flexible, crafty adjusters, they're very good TriStar fighters. And I think Allen is a classic case of that. Like Rory, like GSP, he is somebody who can use that just built-in well-roundedness really to his advantage. Yeah, I've really enjoyed Allen's run to this place in the division. And yeah, like I said, I think at the beginning there are a lot of things that favor him. He's been a featherweight this whole time. He's a pretty athletic fighter, and very quick-handed in particular, as I said. Super quick jab, very quick left hand. And I think Allen is also a harder puncher than he has really shown so far. I don't think he prioritizes loading up and swinging hard, but I think he has the potential to really hurt people when it occurs to him to do so. We saw against Sadiq Yusuff, hurt him twice with some really well-placed shots. I do have questions, because the other weird thing about Allen coming into this matchup He's not really faced anyone remotely like Dan Hooker so far.
You mean 9 feet tall and
Yeah.
250 pounds?
He hasn't faced a single, like, lanky kicker in his entire UFC run. If even before that. And I can see some reasons why that might trouble him. He's like a lot of TriStar fighters do seem to be, he's kind of vulnerable to kicks.
Front foot heavy.
Yeah, he's very front foot heavy, and he is also very willing to retreat. And that is a bigger issue than just opening him up for kicks. But moving around laterally while keeping most of your weight forward, that's leg kick city right there. And so that's a problem. You know, everyone who has tried to throw low kicks in Allen has often landed really hard and like completely disrupted his stance. And yes, he can adjust well. But that is coupled with the idea of Dan Hooker just being given the front foot, being allowed to pressure. I would love this to be the first example of Allen coming in and insisting on standing his ground or backing his opponent up, but it would be the first example, as far as I know. Because for the most part, unless you show zero interest in coming forward, Allen will not press. He will never insist on being on the front foot. He's quite happy to be backed up and to move around on the outside. And Dan Hooker is a little more determined in most fights to come forward. Especially, I think, since that Chandler fight. I don't know that he is ever going to be that willing to retreat ever again, because it was disastrous. So those are causes for concern. Dan Hooker's going to come forward and fire kicks. How does Arnold Allen survive that better than Nasrat Haqparast did?
I mean, he's, apart from anything else, he's just such a craftier puncher.
No doubt.
Like,
he's a southpaw like Haqparast, but he's got a jab, for one.
Yeah, he's got a jab. He throws like the thing that allies him with Rory to some extent is that he can spice up like fighting off the jab with like long multi-punch combinations to different areas of the body.
Yep.
Unlike Rory, he's much more willing to actually do that.
Yeah.
Rory would really only kind of go for those kind of combinations if he was absolutely certain that the opponent wasn't in the position to come back at him. But
yeah,
Allen, I think this also makes him, a functional TriStar fighter is quite a naturally aggressive guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard about him getting into trouble outside of the cage.
Sure.
But
he is inherently
whilst he seems
scrappy.
like a genial guy, in it, I think he's just naturally a bit of a naturally pretty aggressive. And I don't really necessarily think that Hooker is particularly well built to deal with combination punches in the pocket. He's much more like, I'm going to jab and calf kick you, and then when you try and rush in past the jab and calf kick, I will throw a counter, and if you get past that counter, I'm pretty much screwed if I can't clinch with you.
And even then, if you're surprisingly quick, it may take him a while to find the counters. It was actually, I had quite forgotten until just reviewing it, just how close that Haqparast fight was in the first round. That Hooker is doing all the pressuring, he's landing lots of good kicks, but he really eats quite a few clean left hands and right hooks from Haqparast, just surging forward off the fence. And Hooker he doesn't have good defense to begin with, and he's slow. Even at lightweight, he was a pretty slow fighter.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, people who just run in with combinations as he's coming forward can definitely just get free shots. At least a few before Hooker figures out how to adjust. Which he mostly does by just sort of hunching down. That, at least against Haqparast, he sort of just, once he realized Haqparast wanted to back him off with punches, he sort of just hunched into them and then grabbed clinches. Which on the one hand could work. Allen looks like a guy just built to have his posture broken by a tie clinch because he's just leaning forward on that front foot so heavily. You can definitely see the Hooker knees working here like they did against Haqparast. On the other hand, Allen's not Hawkbrust. You come in and you just hunch down. He's going to hit you with uppercuts and hooks. He's going to hit you with short range punches that he has in his arsenal. He's not just limited to, boy, I sure hope you start to run backwards in a straight line when I start punching. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of ideas. So yeah, I don't know. I think this might be one that starts off very well for Hooker and then just, unless he can cripple Allen, which is possible. I kind of see Allen, adjusting to him. And that's just intensified by the fact that I really suspect Hooker is going to have trouble catching up to the speed of Arnold Allen in this first fight back at featherweight. And that is if he hasn't like diminished his reaction time, and his durability by doing the cut again after so long away from it.
Yeah. It's the thing. So looking back at Hooker's last fight at featherweight, Jason Knight.
Yeah.
He lost.
Yeah.
It's not a great look.
That was early stages of Hooker trying to become technical.
Mm-hmm.
He let Jason Knight pressure him.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those ones where you have to balance out all the things which have changed in Hooker since then. I do think he is a much better fighter. It's also just like lots and lots of Knight chasing him around the cage, just throwing combinations at him.
Yeah.
And he's not giving him level changes, he's just throwing combinations, and Hooker just can't get out the way fast enough.
Yeah.
Not like Felder kind of plodding after him, getting set up for the jab. And, again, I don't want to discredit Hooker because we have, like I said, he is genuinely a much, much better fighter than he was then.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing, like, looking back at that fight, is just looking at how much smaller Hooker looked, just in the shoulders and the...
Mm-hmm.
Just finding myself thinking, I just don't think he can safely make this weight.
Yeah, he's spent 5 years or something now growing into a lightweight frame. Maybe it hasn't been that long. Well, no, it has.
And let's not beat around the bush. A massive lightweight frame.
Yeah,
he's a huge lightweight.
Yeah. 6
and so
foot, 75-inch reach.
What's that? Yeah, he's got a 5-inch reach and a 4-inch height advantage over Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but feel like his technical developments are going to be overshadowed by the fact that he's A, going to be slower, and B, just going to be physically compromised at this weight class.
That is my feeling as well.
I think I was probably leaning Hooker when I first started thinking of this matchup, just because I think he's the bigger finishing threat. He's just massive.
Mm-hmm.
He's fought better people.
He's probably gonna get to pressure for substantial portions, and he's got the kicks that Allen doesn't deal with all that well. But yeah,
I mean, I just don't trust him to be able to look good over 15. With what's going to be, I suspect, a significant speed disadvantage, and with I think having just a horrific weight cut.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly the same journey I've been on with this fight. I really think there are a lot of things. If this was just pretend these guys are already fighting in the same division, look at how their styles match up, I think I would still pick Hooker. Even then, it will be a tougher fight than Hawkbrust. Because a lot of the same southpaw shit is gonna work. In what will directionally be probably a very similar looking fight for long portions. A lot of the same shit that did work for Hawkbrust will work with the added advantage. I mean, not as powerful, but whatever. Hawkbrust didn't knock Hooker out anyway. But with the added advantage of Allen can actually adjust and come up with new ideas. Progressively.
And he's actually quite good at it.
Yes. He's a very crafty, inherently scrappy fighter. And even then, I think it would have ended up being quite competitive. But the weight cut really concerns me at this point. I It doesn't seem like a good idea. I've gotten picks wrong in the past plenty of times, just expecting someone to be diminished, cutting weight.
It does happen more and more infrequently, I will say.
What's that?
That, you just expect people to be ruined from a weight cut, and they actually look okay.
Yeah.
The disgusting science of people dehydrating themselves to a skeleton has undeniably gotten a lot better.
Yeah. But it does make me think
it's a combination of that and the tricky technical elements, I think.
But it does make me think, even if Hooker physically feels okay, just the change in feel between the two divisions is going to hamper some of what should be an early advantage for him. An early advantage that it seems like maybe that'll last a round and a half before Allen really starts to figure things out. Now feels like maybe it won't last a round. Maybe, Allen is he's a very quick fighter. Notably for a featherweight even. And, and likes to get in and dust it up with combinations with people. If I had ever seen Allen insist on pressuring a guy who didn't necessarily want to back off, if I'd ever seen that, I would pick Allen because of those factors outright. So I still don't know if we'll see that, but as it is, I'm going to pick Allen too. I like the later adjustments. I just wish this was a main event. I mean, 5 rounds would be very interesting to see how the dynamic changes.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we get heavyweights. Okay. Great fight. Fantastic. Very interested. I hope I see a good version of Dan Hooker. I hope it's just my anti-weight cutting biases, well-founded as they may be.
It is a great fight, but it's also one where just wish Dan Hooker hadn't done it. Yeah,
I don't see what's wrong with him staying at lightweight. Like, okay, you lost to Islam Makhachev, so is everyone else. It's okay. You had a super competitive fight with Dustin Poirier. What was the loss? You lost to Michael Chandler, and then you seem to have taken the right lesson away from that instantly and got arguably the best win of your entire career in your next fight. One of the better wins of your career. So, he should have stayed at lightweight, in my opinion. I don't really see the logic of going down to featherweight. I mean, I do, but it's a kind of typically short-sighted fighter logic, in my opinion.
It's the Brad Pickett to flyweight of career moves. It's like, I'm getting close to the end of my career. I'm going to try and get a title shot down at this weight class.
Last run for the title. Yeah. And featherweight's just not an easy place to have to readjust to. It really isn't. Okay. Let's take a break then. When we come back, whatever smatterings from this undercard we end up touching on, and again, it is quite an interesting undercard, we are definitely going to talk, I think, about Jack Shore versus Timur Valiev right after this break.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. As promised, continuing through this quite interesting, nice, a lot of good variety here in this undercard. And I have only one question, which is, why is this fight, if we agree that Allen Hooker should be the main event, why is this not the co-main event? Or at the very least, like the featured prelim or something? Jack Shore.
What? Yeah.
Timur Valiev. A great fight.
Super weird.
It's just buried in the middle of the prelims.
Yeah. It's slightly more... I mean, to be fair, this is a card where almost pretty much every fight has some genuine relevance to it. It's got an interesting prospect in it, or something to care about.
Mm-hmm.
All the way down the card. I mean, the opener is Mohamed Makayev, who is the hotly touted European prospect.
Yeah,
one of the most highly touted to come out of the region, maybe ever in some ways, as a UFC debutant.
And he gets to fight someone who, while telling him to go back where he came from, will almost certainly have no idea where that from is. So that's gonna be great.
Yeah,
can't wait. Cody Durden, love him. What a guy.
So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on this card, basically.
Yes.
But the placement for this one is still weird, because whoever wins this has an absolutely rock solid case of getting a shot at a top 15 bantamweight.
Oh yeah, which is, as we all know, the matchmakers must know this, the best division.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not kid ourselves, folks. The bantamweight fights rule, even the ones between like quote unquote technicians, like even guys like Timur Valiev and Jack Shore. I guess they're both among the more, purely technical side of that division, have very fun fights. And yeah, I agree. This is a fight with significance. It promises to have some really interesting, both entertaining and like thought-provoking action. It's just clearly like at worst top 3 fights on the entire card. And I would argue it
honestly
is,
like one of the best fights they've booked for weeks. It's just one of the
yeah.
It's not top 3. It's not just like a top 3 fight on this card. It's, is it better than everything last? Is it better than everything last week? I think it is.
Yeah, just as like a like maybe less name value than things like with Marlon Moraes or whatever, but just as like the best combination of this should be fun to watch and also there's a lot of sporting interest here. This means something. 100%. It's a very good fight. In my opinion, the best or second best fight on the card. I would say the best. Fuck it, because I have zero concerns like I did about Dan Hooker and the other really interesting fight here. This is my favorite fight on the card.
Yeah, I don't know if Arnold Allen is going to be we were talking about, seeing young, great fighters, fight each other in their primes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be revisiting Arnold Allen, Dan Hooker, whatever happens. Because it's going to be to some extent, it will be a referendum. It will be, and it will be a point on, like either Hooker's decline or return, right? But this one, I don't have any doubts that these two are going to be mainstays of the division for some time.
And this doesn't seem like a kind of fight that is likely to put a hard ceiling on either guy. Yeah, and as we were saying before too, and this is an interesting case, we talked about in the 2 best fights in this card, we talked about Arnold Allen, who, as I said, is like the last, like, good, promising, effective TriStar fighter. And Timur Valiev, I don't think he's a mainstay at Jackson Wink anymore, but until very recently he was training there and has a very, like, Mike Winkeljohn sort of striking style. The best version of that, I will say. Just like Arnold Allen does the best things with the TriStar boxing game, Valiev has a really solid take on the sort of piecemeal Mike Winkeljohn striking. But these are like the 2 like last remaining sort of good representatives in many ways of those 2 like legacy North American MMA camps. It's just kind of an interesting side note.
And both of them, I think, have essentially leavened their styles with the demands of the modern era, which is why they are actually still, genuine elite prospects. Because essentially they throw much more and are much more aggressive than pretty much anyone from either of those 2 gyms, with the exception of Carlos Condit, and they don't fight like Carlos Condit.
Mm-hmm. So first things first.
He had his own problems.
Or eighth, because we've already, been discussing around this fight for several minutes now. This is a much bigger step up for Jack Shore than it is a new kind of challenge for Valiev. Jack Shore has looked really strong. His last fight was like, in many ways, like a step down from a building momentum, but he did what you want to see in a matchup like that, which is to say he utterly dominated the inferior opposition, in a very studied, methodical, but still in the end quite violent, aggressive way. He fought, Sholinyan. I can't remember the guy's, name right now, but I'm just going to pull up.
Yes. Ludwig Sholinyan.
Right. Ludwig Sholinyan, as they kept saying it. I would say Sholinian, but it's Sholinyan apparently. And let me pull up the stats from that fight, because I looked at them. I'm pretty sure, just off the top of my head, significant strikes, I think it was 92-19 in favor of Jack.
That's about right.
92-19. He completed 2 of the 8 takedowns he attempted and didn't waste a bunch of energy going for the ones that it became quickly clear he wasn't going to complete them. He started doing something else that would work. Nearly 5 minutes of control to 1.5 minutes from Sholinyan. He stuffed 4 takedowns and he landed just shy of 60% of his strikes. So yeah, it was an overmatched fight for Sholinyan, and Shore dealt with that in a way that, makes it look like he's certainly ready for a fight like this. But as of yet, we have not seen him fight someone, reasonably close to the level of Valiev.
No. Which makes it a very, generally makes it a very fight to call, because for a while now, again, like Arnold, Shore he's just been well matched up.
Yeah.
In a way which both makes sense, in a way that the UFC often doesn't. It's also in a way which makes it, you can't see where his ceiling is, because nothing has really particularly placed it there in any firm way.
So all these British fighters getting these sweetheart deals from the matchmakers. What's going on?
As I said, admittedly, unlike Arnold Allen has been matched up well, I think Shore, you could say, has been matched up softly.
Yeah, I still think they've been reasonable until the last one. I think
Hunter Azure is. Yeah, so his first 3 fights all make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Then Linian is. So he was going to fight Said Nurmagomedov. So no, he hasn't been. Was a replacement.
Sholinyan was a short notice fill-in.
Yeah.
Umar Nurmagomedov, by the way, not Said, but still a reasonable matchup at that point.
Huh. Wikipedia says it was Said.
No, it doesn't. That's what I just looked at. Shore was scheduled to face Umar Nurmagomedov. Oh, he was scheduled to face Said before that.
Valiev. He was scheduled to face, so that's why I was saying that Sholinyan was the one where he was supposed. That's the anomaly in his record.
So repeatedly they have
supposed to face Nurmagomedov. Said.
Yeah, he has repeatedly been matched to face tougher guys. It just hasn't happened yet.
Okay, fair enough. I think we're talking around this because neither of us know how to pick this fight.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And just go out and say it. I don't.
No. We can start by sort of trying to understand how these guys' styles function. Jack Shore, I love the way he fights. He is he's a fantastic technical fighter who can build and connect all the disparate parts of his game really, really smoothly. First things first, he's got a jab, a really good one, actually. And everyone knows I like jabs, but Jack Shore's jab is solid. I love the way he uses it. I really like how it ties to his footwork. It's not like flawless footwork, but there are a lot of small steps. There's a lot of, he moves around really quite calmly. And the jab is a big part of the way he moves around, the way that he will line up on the opponent's center line, fire the jab. At the same time, he's taken a small sidestep. Now his stance readjusts. You get a small pivot, and then he's lined up for another jab if the opponent doesn't adjust to that change of position quickly enough. Really, really effective use of it as a sort of defensive range maintaining kind of weapon, which in a lot of matchups encourages opponents to come at him more recklessly, which feeds into a really solid, well-timed, well-rounded, layered takedown game. Which he times his reactive shots exceptionally well. He's got a really, solid understanding of how to transition into different, angles of attack if the shot isn't easily completed. And like I said in that Shilin fight, he doesn't stress himself ever about, like having to get the takedown. He's comfortable enough at range that if it's not going to pan out, he decides to reserve his energy and go back to fighting methodically. And then, I think I said this when it happened. But my favorite part of that recent Jack Shore fight was he was completely in control. He had an opponent who had to just keep getting more and more reckless, and he just kept shutting him down. And even then, in the last minute and a half or so of the fight, he was like, I'm going to start springing big traps, and started firing uppercuts off the jab. He started hooking off the jab and then putting the hook together with the uppercut. One of my favorite things, like one of my, a thing that I stress constantly is that on the feet, when you spring a trap, the trap should have multiple layers to it. You have an idea that you're going to fire the jab, you catch their hand extending and chasing the jab, trying to parry it. Okay, that's when you throw a hook off the jab, to come around their guard. But why stop there? If you know you're about to spring something surprising on the guy, shouldn't there at least be one more punch in that combination? So when you hook off the jab, you should already be prepared. There's a right hand or a right uppercut, something like that coming after it. Shore did that beautifully well. And, went from just sort of easily beating Shilin to like practically finishing him and just busting him up, for the last stage of that fight. So I really, really like the way that his game fits together, and the way that he sort of progresses through all these stages, all these layers in the different phases of his game. How about Valiev? Give me the rundown, Phil, on Timur Valiev's similarly deep but weirdly disjointed game.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think Shore has what you would really say is he's got a very classical game.
Yeah.
You know, you can see the GSP kind of antecedents in it, and where he's been, it's just exactly what people would tell you to do in the gym.
Yeah.
Valiev, as you have mentioned, is exactly what like Winklejohn would tell you to do in the gym, or to some extent, which is not necessarily what I would class as like a classical game, but it still has a lot of utility and it's well put together into something extremely functional.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main thing is he's just got a lot of lateral movement and he's very good at striking off it.
Yeah.
Very good at counterpunching, like throwing weird shots in at strange angles. Unlike the thing which really makes it work, unlike classic Jackson Wink, but it's not one weird strike at a time. It's often like two or three weird strikes at a time.
Yep.
And he's can keep it up at a pace. He's also, unlike say Carlos Condit, he's not a complete liability in the wrestling and grappling.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes him I think just an immensely tricky fighter to go up against. Because I think if you looked at, as we did, we looked against Barcelos against Valiev, and we were just like, well, Barcelos has a clear technical edge almost everywhere, and sort of, and it didn't end up mattering because Valiev won that fight,
mm-hmm.
and regardless of whether you thought Valiev won it or not, I think it was simply extremely close. I don't really have a strong opinion.
No.
It was just a much more competitive fight than I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely.
So yeah, he's just tricky and aggressive, and he's got I think the foot speed and the ability to throw and counter is all stuff that I didn't quite give credence to as much as I should have, and I think it's very relevant considering that Jack Shore has mostly been feasting on kind of plodding guys so far.
Mm-hmm.
The quickest guy he's fought was a very, very faded Vaughn Lee that he didn't do that well against, but who was admittedly also, quite early in his MMA career.
Yeah, and Vaughn Lee was still maybe, in fact, I haven't looked recently, but a tricky veteran for like up and coming fighters to fight for sure.
A very tough fighter to go up against.
Yeah.
I think this is just going to be really competitive. I don't really see anywhere where I'm not sure where I think anyone has a massive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, what do you think about the wrestling? Do you think Shaw can take Valiev down? Because I think that changes the dynamics of this quite a lot.
I mean, I kind of lean towards the grappling being a wash in a matchup like this.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think we'll have opportunistic attempts when one guy is trying to put strikes together. Like he can probably seat Valiev for like a second at some point, but can he keep him down? I don't know about that. Valiev is a very, very springy takedown defender. It's really just the idea that he will surge forward throwing like a preordained, like this is going to be 4 punches and then a big kick kind of thing. And I don't even know if it's entirely fair actually to call it like preordained. I don't think Valiev is that rote a fighter. He's the way he also has a lot of connectivity in his game. And like the contrast between these guys is that Shore's style, like, shuts things down and funnels you into a certain kind of fight when all is going well. Mm-hmm. And that is how things connect very progressively based on like a narrow kind of fight he's forced you into. Valiev just welcomes chaos. He just sort of has a style where it's like, the fundamental idea is I'm going to stay moving and keep a high work rate. And I will just sort of figure out different ways of dealing with whatever you throw at me. But nothing in his style is like preventing you from getting to have an aggressive fight where lots of options are open to you. You're going to find out later how he's going to answer those options. It's not like Shore's very jab-centric boxing game where it's like, okay, how are you going to close on me? You can't. You have to do something stupid in order to get in here. Valiev also has a jab, but unlike the nice, like, piercing defensive jab, it's like a weird, frenetic. I still like the way he uses it, but it's like a really annoying pawing jab that just sort of, or even like a flicker jab. It just sort of pops it out in your face like 4 or 5 times in a row and then winds up with something else. He's also the kind of guy who will do like he's much more likely to just pull shit out of his hat. Like, I'm going to bend down and threaten a takedown and then pop up and throw a head kick, which is a very Carlos Condit kind of move. But yeah, it's just a lot more chaotic. And I do wonder, if I don't think Shore is going to have what is usually a very useful out, at least for a moment to rest and collect himself, of hitting a reactive shot and controlling the opponent. I do wonder how he's going to deal with the fact that Valiev is going to throw all kinds of weird shit at him. And here's my trouble with this fight, Phil, is that weird shit is weird for a reason. It looks weird. I'm going to do something terrible. I was I'm playing chess these days. I was just talking about this with Tom Elliott on Twitter. He's talking about people playing weird chess openings. And there's 2 ways you can go with that. You can do what a lot of Valiev opponents do and be freaked out by it, and that could happen. Or you can be like, that's weird because it's bullshit, and now I'm going to punish it. And I don't know how Jack Shore reacts to the dozens and dozens of weird openings that a guy like Valiev will present. Because on the one hand, rushing forward and squaring up, trying to put together combinations works if the opponent does the thing you want them to do, if they treat it like it's, a genuine threat. But if they treat it as an invitation to jab you in the face or jab you in the chest and just stop you in your tracks, that might just work. There's a reason that fundamentals are fundamentals.
We've mentioned a lot of the problems with the Jackson Wink style is that can find all-purpose counters, which will cover, many of the weird things that are coming at you.
They're fundamentals for a reason, because the things Jack Shore does are designed to work against a wide variety of weird ideas.
One thing I think that is interesting, at least in this fight, is that I think one of the things that really defines Valiev is that he's a really fast kicker.
Yeah.
As in, he can do it in lots of different ways.
Yep.
Not always the prettiest, but easily he will kick into kicks. He'll do the old Darren Cruikshank, from one leg, head kick from the other kind of.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those people who can double and triple up on kicks. Yeah, throw it moving forwards, occasionally maybe even going backwards. But
yeah.
So yeah, I think one of the big questions in this one is can he let his kicks go, or will that just be an opportunity for Shore to hit counter takedowns on him? Because it can be done.
Sure.
Trevin Jones, I think, did it to him. In the process of getting mostly getting his ass kicked.
It's an opportunity, though.
Jones, it's the person that
he knocked Valiev out.
Yeah, that then knocked him out.
Yeah, uppercut counter, if I recall correctly. Lead uppercut.
He was
counter.
getting absolutely stomped before that.
Yeah. Valiev was close to finishing him for 3 minutes straight.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's another one of those questions where I raise it, but I don't really know what the answer is.
Right.
I just have to see it. If Valiev can find a way, because as I said, he's a very quick kicker. It's not easy to take him down off them.
Not at all.
Shore is, again, he's a masterful level changer. It's just something I'm interested to see what happens. I don't really have a great read on it. Yeah,
and I will add that getting those takedowns does sort of assume that you can time Valiev, which is often very tricky. If you are at least going to let him have some initiative, even if you are, controlling that center line and making his path in very difficult, he's a weird, jerky fighter. So, and again, his striking is so bizarrely flexible that he, like you said, will just fire 2, sometimes up to 3 weird kicks in succession from a variety of angles, moving in different directions. I guess I'm going to, just because it sounds the most satisfying to me, and this is not a good basis to make a pick, but I'm going to be the fundamental technique for a reason guy and pick Jack Shore to win in what is admittedly a very big step up against a similarly adaptable and much weirder fighter than he's ever faced before. Also, a guy who is athletically, I think, on the level of a dude like Hunter Azure, but is just a way better fighter. So the speed, the strength, these are all new things that very conceivably trouble Jack Shore. And that is if he isn't being worn down from the early going by a super high volume low kick attack that he's never had to deal with before. But I think there is a lot messy with what Valiev does, and more so than Barcelos, who can lean on his athleticism and at a certain point gets overwhelmed and decides to just slug it out with people. Shore is a really, I think, dyed in the wool technician. I think that is the bedrock of his game, is, like you said, he's a GSP-esque fighter. So I'm going to pick him. It's probably a bad pick.
Yeah, I'm as I want to nowadays, I'm going to take the coward's way out. Yeah. I think you can see some of the issues that Shore has. I think like a GSP or more notably like Rory, when he can't sort of hold someone in place with the jab.
Yeah.
think you can see him getting a bit more ragged. As I said, the Vaughn Lee fight is a long time ago, and he's developed quite a bit since then. Vaughn Lee is very mobile and very tricky, and you saw Shaw having to just reach into a bigger bag of tricks to try and catch Lee on the outside of just reaching and kicking from the outside, and in ways that you could see like Valiev countering, or just if he's kicking with Shaw, he's going to outkick him quite easily, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just a level of competition. So, Barcelos, a super high quality fighter. Shaw just hasn't had to deal with that, as you said. Like, he's had to deal with speed in Lee, and he's had to deal with power in Azure, but he hasn't had to deal with combination of them like Valiev had to with Barcelos, and the combination of them with a tremendous all-round technical game. I've kind of feel like I have to pick Valiev, but it's a fascinating fight. I don't really have a massive read on it. I'm just interested to see how several elements of the fight play out. Yeah, no,
my gut feeling is that Valiev is a smarter pick. And as much as I enjoyed seeing the depth, because you said, Jack Shore back against Vaughn Lee, he had to reach for things that maybe he wasn't that comfortable with yet. He also reached for them at will late in that Shelin fight, and he had them, man. They were all the additional layers to his boxing game that he didn't have to pull out at any point. He could have just done the same thing that was working. But even then, at will, it took him 13 minutes to really start building on the stuff that had been working all night long. And maybe that suggests that if forced to, those things will be there for him. Maybe it suggests that Jack Shore is still liable to be surprised and made uncomfortable and not be just ready and willing to fight in longer exchanges and deal with the wide variety of stuff that Valiev is going to throw at him.
Yeah. So, or it could just be, they get into exchanges, and every time Valiev tries to kick him, he just gets taken off his feet.
Yeah, or just keeps getting punched in the face. Like it may be questionable who won the fight with Barcelos. There's no question who won the second round. He just, Valiev's not a great defensive fighter. He has defensive ideas, and he will do stuff with them, but it's mostly just sort of like wincing and ducking. Like, again, I'm just picking this because I'm a dork, and I like technique, and I think good technique is good technique, and Jack Shore has it. It is very much I have a dog in this fight.
You deserve to be rewarded for this, Jack Shore.
That is how I feel. Even though I think there's so many other factors to fighting, technique is not the end all be all of what makes a successful fighter, and very likely will not be the end all be all of this particular fight. But whatever happens, very, very interesting, and I expect it will be entertaining as well as stimulating to think about, both after the fact as it has been now ahead of time. But that's all the time we have for this card. Certainly, I'm glad we got to spend so much time discussing this one, which I'm really looking forward to. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, boxing.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, folks, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We don't have a ton of time in what has already, I think, been like an hour-long episode. More and more, Phil, the episodes are just like an hour and a half. If they're an hour and 10, I'm like, oh man, this is a short one. So here we've got, at least 10 to 15 minutes to talk about a fight of the year contender from last weekend. One which I said at the top of the show, no one expected to deliver the kind of fireworks that it delivered. We have Michael Conlon, Mick, as the Irish. Maybe only the Irish are allowed to call him that. I guess it's a racial slur if I say it, isn't it?
It might be, but, has that ever stopped you before?
No, not at all. So we've got the filthy bog dweller, Michael Conlon, fighting the proud Anglo-Saxon Lee Wood. I think Conlon was favored coming into this fight. This is, I believe, and again, I have to just openly admit that I have not, unfortunately, not followed boxing all that closely the last few years, although fights like this and watching Chocolatito fight last week make me wish that I was paying more attention to it as a sport rather than just dipping in to enjoy it as a spectacle when I can. But I'm pretty sure this was like the second tough matchup of Lee Wood's title reign so far. The second one where he had to be very, very gutsy to win it, which, spoilers, he ultimately did. But I do believe a lot of people were expecting Conlon to do a softer version of what he ended up doing for much of this fight, which is sort of befuddling Lee Wood. Conlon is, I would love for more boxing fans to listen to our show so that I can upset them with what I'm about to say. He reminds me of Dominic Cruz.
Ooh.
In that he's a very smart, well put together fighter. He has a really tricky defense first kind of game. And only when you get down to like the particulars of like punching form, which really is where I think the comparison is strong, do you start to think this guy's a little bit of a mess. He's a little bit more of a mess than you want him, than he wants you to know that he is. He's a very kind of loopy, ropey puncher, and I do think that probably played a factor in this fight. But as far as like Lee Wood as a technician, Conlon was basically all over him for the vast majority of the rounds that they shared. And that started with, as I said, a much more violent version of befuddling Wood than people expected, because Conlon is not a noted puncher. That started with him dropping Lee Wood hard at the end of a first round. That was probably going Wood's way. Wood landed a lot of good right hands to the body. Conlon still getting a look at him, still trying to get his timing. But you said this to me before, Phil. It looks for at least half a second like Lee Wood is unconscious. It's a hard knockdown.
Yeah, it is one of those, 100% one of those, oh, he dead knockdowns.
Yeah.
Someone goes flat on their back with their arms rigid.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, that's it.
And it's no wonder.
I was watching this with all the time like left in the fight, and I was like, oh. No, you just instinctively go, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
He's
you know it's done.
The end of the fight. That was a cool knockout. I'm glad I was told to watch this, and then you look at how much time is remaining in the video.
Yeah, it really reminds me mechanically of the first knockdown in Pacquiao Marquez 4, where Marquez has been targeting Pac's body, and then steps in, sort of eyes low, forward, and Pacquiao swats for what he thinks is a body shot, and is left leaning back and very upright for an overhand on the chin. Which is a switch-up that Conlon basically continued befuddling Wood with through much of this fight. Left hand to the body, overhand left to the chin. That, like, Wood... It took Wood, after being, for all intents and purposes, knocked unconscious, and then somehow waking up. It took him until round 4 to even look remotely comfortable. And even then, it's like he kept coming up with solutions to the left hand. Like, at one point, he sort of stops responding to it, which kind of works. He sort of just like keeps his guard up and stays in middle distance, so the looping shot just wraps around and doesn't land clean.
Also, just like ducks all the way over at the waist and puts his hands over his head.
He starts rolling under it, maybe a little too hideously to really deserve a cool, slick term like a rolling a punch. But yeah, he comes up with a variety of defenses, and he just can't stick to any of them because Conlon continues plugging away at his body. with that left hand, continues confusing his timing, first and foremost, as to knowing where the left hand is coming and when, and then just makes small adjustments to how he's throwing it to just repeatedly, each time it looks like Wood has kind of gotten a read on that punch, a minute later, it'll land super hard and clean again. And the only improvement you can really see that sticks is that he takes it better as the fight goes on.
This is definitely a fight where you look at it, and if you hear, like, Conlon was a reasonable favorite, you would look at it and you'd just be like, yes.
Right.
Yes, he is a reasonable favorite. I think would make him a reasonable favorite in the rematch, too.
Yeah, right? Yeah, as far as
the amount of success he has is just, it's just protracted.
As far as commentary was saying, sorry, go on.
I mean, that's pretty much it. It's just really surprisingly so. It's the amount of time that it takes Wood to kind of find his way back into the fight. Mm-hmm. And just the degree of success. Because I was watching this, after that knockdown, I was just watching it being like, when does it start becoming a Fight of the Year candidate and not just one-way traffic from the Irish guy?
Right.
He's beating him up for quite some time.
Yeah, there are basically a couple of rallying points for Wood. Round 4 being the first. It's a round he arguably wins, although I'm not convinced of that. I think I gave it to Conlon while I was sort of vaguely scoring while watching it. And then round 8, he sort of has to rally because Conlon is just beating the shit out of him. But he has some success just forcing Conlon back against the ropes and pouring it on to save his own ass. And then round 10, he's having a little more success, and then round 11, he gets a knockdown. So it is really, like you said, one-way traffic for the vast majority of the fight. And there are a couple of rallying efforts that are impressive and courageous and all that, and exciting, but they're shut down each time.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of, I think, Conlon kind of retreating behind his shoulder.
Yeah.
Mostly what Wood keys in on is the wide right to the body to chase him down.
It's the first punch he's looking for in the fight, too.
Yeah. It's the fact that he just has to wade through so much punishment before it really starts working in a way which is beneficial to him.
Yeah. This is a great example of somebody really struggling to follow excellent advice that they're getting from their corner. Because what Wood's corner wanted him to do was to stop throwing punches in open space at all. They're like, you're missing and getting countered every goddamn time. It's not just the left hand from Conlon, by the way. The counter right hook, the secret southpaw weapon that works better than anything else against most right-handers, catches him so many times when he's trying to lunge in with a looping shot from outside. His corner says, stop loading up, first of all. Stop committing to virtually any punches that aren't jabs at long range. Use feints and put him against the ropes, and then unload. Which is ultimately...
Yeah, because once you can see where Wood is actually the better fighter once that happens. Once they're in pocket exchange, he is a tighter, more dangerous combination puncher.
And Conlon
just the fact
Conlon's more comfortable. Like I said, he's a little less slick than he wants you to think he is. He's more comfortable fighting with his back to the ropes for a period of time than he should be. You put him there, and he thinks he's going to outslick you still, and he will give you chances before even making an effort to really get away. So absolutely, and when those moments do arise, you can see it. It suddenly becomes a great sort of style matchup for Lee Wood. But he really struggled, and I'm not understanding it. I mean, the guy, he was doing pretty well, and then just got hurt horribly, and was basically playing from behind the entire time.
It is one of those ones where you find yourself, you also find yourself thinking, I wonder how conscious he was.
Right.
The 3 to 4 rounds that followed that knockdown.
Yeah. I really don't think it's no surprise he doesn't even look like a competent opponent until round 4 after that knockdown. it shouldn't surprise anyone. I think he was probably completely out of it for long stretches of this fight. So a lot of people have already talked about Leigh Wood's like body work being a decisive factor here, and it is, as you said, Phil, like a thing that he sticks to really consistently. But I don't think that can possibly be the whole story, because if I had to point to one guy whose body work really impressed me in this fight, it's Michael Conlon, who, and people have said this, by the way, that people who were there at the event, there was an audible difference in the feeling of the two men's body punches. That Leigh Wood is a harder puncher than Conlon, which is why it's such a shock that Conlon dropped him early. And that Wood's body shots sounded horrific to people at ringside. Like every time he landed one, it was a horrible thud. And I'm willing to believe that. But Conlon hurts Wood with body shots at least 2 times in the fight. Visibly hurts him. Like gets him to.
Yeah, I think it is. In some ways, I don't think people want ugly narratives for their fights.
Yeah.
And you don't want to watch a fight, which is a great fight and something contested at the top level and so on. You don't want to be like, this guy won because he was just tougher.
Yeah.
You want to have like more technical things to point to.
We're guilty of that all the time.
Yeah.
We all want this sort of like teleological, like very logical progression of events, where one thing cause an event. Cause and effect.
And you don't want it to be something ugly. You don't want the cause to be just an ugly brute thing. Like the classic example for me is always I think it was Holloway Aldo 1, where people were like, oh yeah, Holloway tired Aldo out with his bodywork. So no, he didn't.
He made him trade punches over and over and over again. That was the big thing, right? He just wouldn't go away.
I think the quality bodywork in that fight. Maybe it might be the second fight, but I think it is the first one. I think it's Aldo's. I think he lands the better shots to the body, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't have the cardio to, he doesn't have the cardio or the punching. I guess the style of shots that he throws to be able to maintain the Holloway pace. I think that's a bit like this. People trying to find a subtler reason.
Yeah,
the outcome.
We're really like
Wood is just insanely tough and guts it out until his style can. Until his style has a chance to work, and then it suddenly works shockingly well.
I fully agree. Like Holloway Aldo is a great comparison. He just doesn't go away and doesn't stop fighting. I would add that, and again, I'm not saying the body shot has no effect. It's never a bad idea to hit the body. If you're going to tire the guy out with just stylistic pressure, then why not throw some body shots in? Good idea. But I would also add that I think another slightly ugly aspect is that I think Conlon is just a really quite inefficient fighter. And I think it's honestly remarkable that he can do as much. The pace of this fight is really high, even when it is largely Conlon doing the good work. He moves around a lot, super splayed stance. Like, those wide legs, man, that's a lot of strain for your legs to put up with, just constantly dipping and bending your knees, and then having to readjust the position of your feet when your legs are like 3 feet apart.
And just almost every shot from range he's like a big fan of trying to punch people from where they can't see it.
Yeah.
Similar to Cruz.
Yeah, like Dominic Cruz. That's the first thing that made me think of that, is like, here's a lot of big inefficient movements, and the punches are no exception. Big loopy punches. So I think that's just as much a factor that here's a guy who's arguably doing the more quality body work, who's doing tons of other attritional work, just racking this guy on the chin over and over again, and his own pace, I think, contributes to him just being majorly slowed down by the end of the fight. And the ultimate tough guy sequence is in round 11 when the first Leigh Wood knockdown happens, when Conlon is just beating the shit out of Wood. Like, Wood has started to pressure him harder, has had more success, is putting him against the ropes from round 10 on, just like his corner asked. And Conlon is just strafing him with body shots, uppercuts, And he lands the southpaw counter right hook that has worked numerous times, lands it flush, and Wood just doesn't stop punching. Conlon slips back off to an angle. Wood just turns and keeps following with punches and lands a hook over the top. Conlon's just not in position for it yet. He's a little too slow on the trigger and gets knocked down with like an ugly punch. It's not a pretty clean shot. And I think his own inefficiency is as much a part of that, and Wood's toughness is a huge factor. And then Wood just bullies him into the ropes and knocks him unconscious with a shot he does not see on the temple, I think, like a short right hook uppercut hybrid kind of punch. And then Conlon falls through the ropes and lands on his head, and everyone was very, very worried, for very good reason. And I got to give credit to Lee Wood, who was super classy. After the fight, he and his team were like trying to shush the crowd. You British crowds, by the way, you're the worst.
Hey.
The rowdiest, most obnoxious fans on earth. You're better when you're in the UK. Anytime I watch like a boxing card like in Germany, and the Brits have all just like, you know, presumably just like sort of swum across the channel to watch. Terrible. Awful guests in neighboring countries, you people. And I say this as an American, fully aware of how terrible we are as audiences. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, you are as bad. But yeah, you know, the UK isn't allowed to colonize anywhere anymore, so you just have to go places and just chant and puke on them.
But credit to Lee Wood and his team. The British crowd is like, yeah, we beat that fucking Irish fucker.
Where we go.
And his team is like, everyone shut up. We don't know if Michael Conlon's okay. They're like doing quiet down gestures. Michael Conlon does the interview and he says he feels like he can't celebrate till he knows, or Wood, sorry. And he says he can't celebrate till he knows that Conlon is okay. Very nice. Yeah, very, very, very classy touch, I think, to just add a little nice sentiment to what was already just an incredibly courageous performance from Lee Wood.
Yeah.
Great fight.
Fantastic.
Yeah, for a matchup that is largely a tale of two fights, the turn is so dramatic and unexpected that the sustained punishment Wood goes through before that just makes it all the more exciting when it does change. Very good. Glad I watched it. Thank you everyone on Twitter for just going completely apeshit and freaking out the entire time it was happening. Otherwise, I wouldn't have checked it out. And yet another, I think, much appreciated opportunity to talk about something other than the UFC on this podcast. So if you out there listening, most of whom are UFC fans, MMA fans, if you haven't seen it yet, you can probably find it online somewhere. Go watch it. Michael Conlon, Lee Wood. You will not be disappointed. And that's it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. What do we have?
No, it isn't.
What?
Forgetting the most important combat sport event of this weekend. Once again, Connor.
What's that?
Is, of course, Bjornsson and Eddie Hall in their boxing match.
I thought it was going to be X-Arm or something.
I mean, that would actually be better, let's be honest.
Put those two guys in one of those like slap fight competitions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're actually right on the first one. X-Arm is really what these guys should be doing.
Yeah.
I think you've nailed it. It was made for these guys. Yeah, so anyway, that's going to be very funny. And, you know, we had a Mariusz Pudzianowski retrospective on the Depressed Us. And one of the really interesting things that you learn from something like that is how specialized human strength is.
Yes.
Because logically, you watch any kind of like World's Strongest Man thing, and you're like, you know, they're lifting these incredible weights and having these unbelievable feats of strength, and you immediately think to yourself, just sort of shouldn't matter how a human reacts in a grappling situation.
Yeah.
A World's Strongest Man should simply be able to lift up another human, like by their ankle, and just like just throw them, and just like slam them like the Hulk in the Avengers. Like that should just be totally plausible for them. And then you see like Mariusz Pudzianowski fighting in MMA, and he just looks like a completely regular heavyweight.
Yes, arguably worse than many regular heavyweights.
So this is going to be genuinely horrific. I mean, even aside from anything else, like the fact that it's a boxing match, like...
Whoa, is it?
Yeah.
No.
It's just a boxing match. It's not even MMA.
That's somehow better and much worse.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I mean, they're at least gonna be able to have more mutual moments of tiredness.
Yeah. That'll be great.
Because there's not going to be like one of them falling over on the other and then just sitting there whilst they both turn puce. I also was just going to learn that there is a level of musculature beyond which you can't throw effective punches anymore because your arms don't bend right. And like it's probably going to happen here. It's going to be some funny ass punching.
Yes, we call that mutually assured obstruction.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be great. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about it next week. I really can't wait. Although, the odds, unlike these two fighters, are looking kind of slim. Because next week's card, while saddled with another heavyweight main event, yay, in Curtis Blades versus Chris Daukaus, it does also have pretty solid undercard, gotta say. We're hitting an upswing here as we head into spring. We've got Joanne Calderwood, now Joanne Wood, against Alexa Grasso in the co-main. Askar Askarov, Kai Kara France is somewhere on that card. The order has not been finalized, at least on Wikipedia. Matt Brown, Brian Barberena feels like a perfectly appropriate thing to do with those two fighters at this point in time. Ilir Latifi is back, and he's fighting Alexei Oleinik.
Ooh.
That should be the heavyweight main event. What are we fucking around with Blades Daukaus for? And then it's also got way down, I'm guessing, on the undercard because it's a flyweight fight, Matthews Nicolau, David Dvorak, which I quite like. Actually, I think it's just Dvorak. It's not like the composer. But pretty good looking undercard there. We'll have to try really hard to squeeze in both this week's recaps and those previews around what will surely be a 45-minute long segment one about Eddie Hall and what's the other guy's name?
Alfthor Bjornsson.
That's right. So somehow we'll squeeze in as many of those fights, those less meaningful fights as we can. Until then,
what Patrick would have wanted.
It is actually what Patrick. It's probably the first combat sports event he will watch in the last 3 years. He's going to tune in for Bjornsson versus Hall. Pat, by the way, I should say, Dr. Wyman, not that he needs our plugs, but he just did like an Olympic weightlifting competition for the first time in his life. And he looked like a hoss. He just very easily completed his lift. He made it look effortless. So congratulations to Dr. Wyman on that.
Yes, I believe he also hit his some insane thing, 30 million listeners on crazy stuff.
Well, that's enough talk about that. The less said about Tides of History, the better. I shouldn't have even named the podcast. It does not need a promotion. And actually, fuck Dr. Wyman.
Yeah, he looked like a bitch lifting those incredibly heavy. Crush me like an ant.
I'm not fantasizing about him doing just that right now. Find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. Tune in next week when we will have all of those exciting fights to talk about. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been approximately an hour and a half of heavy hands.